I think that the most valuable thing anybody can have in their life is good friends. Okay, I still stand by that. You could be in a trench in World War II. You could pull out a cigarette. You guys haven't eaten in 2 days, and you've been shot at, and one of you's bleeding out, dying of gangrene, and you could smile. There's joy there. And like, what the hell? And now we exist in a world where most people don't even have friends. And I know so many people that I work with that are surrounded by people but have no friends.
Welcome to the Nickolas Natali Show. Today we have Naftali Moses joining us. Naftali's mission is to create authentic, truthful, and powerful individuals through his personal coaching business. He's best known for his hot takes across social media, varying from topics like relationships, confidence, and masculinity. Sometimes his takes can stir up some controversy, so buckle in. Prepare yourself for some hot takes, fresh off the flames like a s'more, marshmallow fuming with flames. Don't get burnt, baby. Riddle of the week: which state has the most streets? Stay tuned to the end of the episode to find out. Let's get to it. Hello and welcome. This is the Nickolas Natali Show. I'm your host, Nickolas Natali. Today we have a very special guest, Naftali Moses. How's it going? Thank you for being here.
Absolutely exceptional today, and I am so happy to be here.
Awesome. Glad to have you. We're going to waste no time. We're going to dive right in. I've heard you state that the hardest work isn't in scaling the business, it's in the internal work. And to start working on the internal work, we got to ask ourselves 3 questions. Who am I? What's my purpose? And what drives me? Based on those questions, what are strong indicators that someone is progressing in the right direction?
Strong indicators you're progressing in the right direction. I think on the simplest level, it feels good. Something about it makes you feel a sort of presence. You're no longer looking at the Jonases with their new Porsche. You're in your own life, and you're doing something that's true to you. And anybody who does something true to them already gives themselves an antidote to the pain that they're experiencing, because I think that truth heals. It's where love resides. We all want love. I think everybody wants love. I noticed that when people start this internal work by asking themselves those questions, it puts a little bit of a lens into your own eyes for just a second. And I believe that they're comforting questions. They're comforting questions because they're truthful questions. They're not, are you making 7 figures? Did you scale your business? How many girls have you slept with? Which is a bunch of like being put out in every media possible. Or did you hustle enough today? It's, am I aligned with this? And am I completely powerless in the face of the vastness of the universe, the vastness of God, the human experience that we live in its absolute vulnerability? But when we put that mirror in front of us, it's like we finally actually get relieved, because it's like we're being spoken to by ourselves. That's the first question you ask. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm not moving as much after you ask me that question. What's going on? Go to the club, ask yourself, what is my mission?
Yeah.
Like what is my purpose and what drives me? And then you go out and you're steady, and maybe you're not the best looking guy, but you're good looking enough to get what you desire. And that's all that matters. And those questions are great to ask because they actually show you that you're already starting to develop emotional intelligence, and you're building a whole new structure, and it's the structure of yourself. And people can really know that they're developing progress because it just feels good. It feels true. It feels real. The worst thing that we can all do with our lives is not build something. It's actually build lies, and then find ourselves years later breaking apart those lies just to live one day of truth. That's the story of most people, is they're like, I was this guy doing this thing, the status quo, and then it's like, well, what do you ask them? What do they do now? Take like a Shia LaBeouf type. He works at Home Depot.
Shia LaBeouf works at Home Depot now? No way. Really?
And it was something that he was doing for his ego. John Bernthal and him had a podcast. Really recommend that you watch it. John Bernthal does a very similar things. He interviews ex-convicts, criminals, and people that just got bad raps. And he wants people to hear the darkness, the shadow, so that other people can expand. That podcast took me a step back. And Shia LaBeouf is like, yeah, I work at Home Depot now, because his ego was all about being the performance boy. He was gifted since the day he was born. A little bit like that. He realized that there's truth in that. He didn't go, oh, now that I found some of the truth, I'm going to integrate it into my lies. No, he just broke everything that he ever built and said, just a little bit of truth and just a little bit of love is better than a whole house. And yeah, he embodied that.
Have you uncovered what drives you and all of these things and all these pursuits?
I think it's romantic. I have like a subconscious romantic plot. And I think that's when you really ask those questions, it's like the youth is revitalized. You stand taller. You're like making love more. And it's not just with the opposite sex, but it's with life. And you could feel the romantic energy everywhere you go. You're with your friends in the Halloween Horror Nights line, and you could hear the screams in the theme park distantly, and the merry-go-round spinning. It's like there's a sub-romantic plot there, and I think that we all can be in touch with that. And so that was something that always drove me. Is just I want to see love, because on the other side of that is beauty, and I believe that love can only be created with the accumulation of beauty and kindness, right? The masculine and feminine coming together, and I think that's like the most interesting thing. Like, people that are really in touch reduce things to simplicity and try to put all of themselves into that simplicity, because that simplicity is infinitely vast. I was a point in my life, I was like, well, what drives me? And it was like, well, these emotions drive me. These emotions to do good drives me. Wanting to see that love in the world. And by the way, love is a warrior's word, not a lover's word. And then it was just effortless. It was like, okay, well, now I'm out on this journey. Why am I out on this journey? So I could be my most authentic self. Why? So that I can have everything around me be a product of me. And then I can actually choose it, not letting life just choose these things for me as I go, well, I guess this is love. No, I know this is love because I chose that person. I realized that actually the majority of my life was one big coping mechanism. And I really felt like I would be living a lie if I continued this, right? I was living a lie initially. And then it was like, well, then how do you live a truth? And you start doing some things that are truthful. And you're like, well, this feels great. Kind of like what I was saying initially. And then after you start doing more things that are truthful, it starts to make you realize how much of you still has so much on you. And what's the one thing I always wanted? It's like, well, real love. Not the shit that people, not the B comedies with John Cusack. It's the things that make us be better. That's what I want to stare at all the time, because it's a look at that remarkable beauty and then go into your life and bring that beauty into the world. So there's like a level of capacity and your ability to receive the lessons from that beauty, increasing your capacity, making you more fulfilled. And it's like a chain reaction of fulfillment followed by wealth, followed by love. And so I realized, like, okay, I'm just not an authentic person. None of these things actually represent me. And so the scariest thing that I had to do in my life was just step into myself fully, like pull my boots on all the way. And by the way, I saw people run. Most people with a bad mindset, or I'd say even a bad system of values, would go, well, they're running from me. And it's like, I would too. And it was not because I'm not worthy of love, but because the size difference can hurt them. And I understand that. I wanted to meet my tribe. I wanted to build a tribe. And I believe that if I can do that in my life with my family and my friends, I make a joke with my friends, the Avengers Initiative. And it's like, well, why? Because it's like family among friends. It's kindness and beauty and the constant camaraderie and challenge, which brings out more love. And it's not like my friends are single at the moment. I'm not married. And none of them are either, but we're all holding ourselves to a standard, and we're only asking the best out of one another. And it's because finally one day I just want everything to be a representation of me, so I can no longer blame anything else except myself. It's like, oh, that person was something I needed to do and confront. We could show up together for one another. And it's not about perfection. It's just about bringing love. I want to see more of it.
Love is definitely a worthwhile pursuit. Hey, it's Nick here. Hope you're enjoying this episode. I got a little surprise for you. I'm starting a free newsletter where I give away all my insights on podcasting, finance, entrepreneurship, and more. So click the link in the show notes, and I'll send you a fresh batch of tips straight to your inbox each week. Sounds pretty easy, right? So go ahead and do it. All right, back to the episode. You brought up a lot of good things. One of them is finding the people that can hold you accountable to a high standard. That's fantastic. And I do think when you make changes in your character for the better, I think it can be scary for folks. And sometimes it's shedding skin like scales on a snake. And another thing that you brought up that I thought was interesting too was this idea of a coping mechanism. I've heard you talk about how we use fear as a coping mechanism. And it could be a fear of rejection, could be a fear of failure, could be a fear of success. But initially it's created to protect yourselves. But in reality, it can kind of hold us back from these things. What's your take on overcoming those types of coping mechanisms? That's like, you're doing your job, but it's not pointing us in the right direction. You know, you're not pushing us forward.
When fear is not even utilized to protect yourself anymore, it's just actually sabotaging your life.
Yeah.
I think the simplest understanding is just the most obvious one, which is we're not here to thrive. We're not here to build skyscrapers, or we're not here to paint beautiful art, film exceptional film, right? We're not even here to make love. And I'm not saying this, I'm just talking about like how we were evolutionarily, we were made. And so it's like, well, we're here to survive, reproduce. That's it. right? So that's what's functioning on like a base level and just like on an evolutionary level. And I noticed that a lot of the time people use fear as a signal to stop. One of the things that I've done in order to make it something effective is use it as a signal to act. And the only thing that stops us from not acting is the way that we'll be perceived when we experience fear. So it's actually like intention setting. So a lot of the time you could be afraid of things. And I'm actually for people being afraid of things because it's pretty good when somebody pulls a gun out on you. I'd recommend you have a fear response.
Yeah, you'd hope.
And I think it's pretty good when bombs are going off and you could run. You'll run fast, right? It's also a great way to recognize things that you should probably avoid, like lions and tigers. So look at it that way, and you no longer want to get rid of it. And that's like a really powerful trick for a lot of people. Look at it as something that's part of you that's there to protect you, not as the thing that's holding you back. And like all emotions, they love recognition, and they hate when you resist them. So just do one thing, which is just label that emotion that you're feeling. I'm feeling scared as okay, any tigers in the room? No tigers in the room. So now there's the other thing, which is the thing that I truly desire in front of me. And then I feel paralyzed by this fear. I said, well, what's going to get me to the other side? The thing about fear is that sometimes it makes you and then it shapes you. And then that isn't you because that's not love. That's not you at a core level. It's not you at a godly level. There's something that I like to do, which is use it as a signal to act and remove your ego. Fear is not a problem. The way that you perceive yourself is a bigger problem than being afraid. And a lot of people forget that because sometimes being afraid was usually followed by a great relief and a great victory. So fear is usually a good indicator for, challenge to be overcome, right? But then what do we come in there as perfectionists? That's where the real sabotage happens. Fear is not the problem. It's perfectionism that is the problem. And that's usually stemmed through a fear of failure. But then that fear of failure and the amount of cameras we have on us nowadays create really big egos. And so what ends up happening is that opposed to us just being afraid and acting and making a fool of ourselves and then laughing at the fact that you just confronted the thing that you were afraid of, we go, afraid. Now I'm afraid of my own self-image being destroyed. And then you become paralyzed. There's fear on one side of you, and then that's feels like you can't move back. And then there's the ego right in front of you. And then that paralyzes you and crystallizes you and you can't move. So I like fear as a signal to act. And that was a great thing that retrained my nervous system to feel less of it. It was like I'd see a big roller coaster fear. And I'm like, okay, we're going on this. Voluntary decision to confront it creates a release. If my brothers were to drag me, throw me on it, last minute I wake up, I'm like, what? Oh no. I'm on this roller coaster, right? I'm going to hate them. I'm going to be traumatized. And it was not something I voluntarily took upon myself. Yeah. So the difference between you overcoming that is just the belief. So just kind of welcome it and go, okay, let me try to reframe this as much as possible. So now you've made a commitment. I'm going to confront this thing. I'll speak to that girl. I'll go take that job. I'll call my boss. I'll talk to this person I probably need closure with, because that's the signal, is the fear, because you know that there's something that needs to be investigated there. And then on the way, or in the line on the way to that roller coaster, you're trying to reframe it and see it as many different ways as possible while using yourself relative to that challenge. Okay, if I'm going to fight this dragon, what do I got? It's like, okay, well, I got this some tools here. We got some stuff here. So you're learning a lot about yourself, and that thing is going to stay what it is. And then you're like, well, maybe it's not that big. All right, all I got is a stone and a slingshot. And that's a big giant. That's a David and Goliath metaphor. He wasn't afraid. Like, clearly he had faith. That's like the only antidote to it. And so you're like, okay, well, you check your pockets. You got a slingshot and a rock. And then you're like, well, that's all I got. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the dude and you're like, well, 12 feet, at least 1,000 pounds. He's got a sword that's bigger than me. Wow, that forehead is fucking massive.
Yeah.
I think I know where I'm going to put this rock.
Yeah.
So it was a commitment. And it starts with, I'll slay Goliath.
Yeah.
And okay, then why the would you say that? That's a giant. You're a small little man. And I said, well, I got belief. I got faith. And it went from being afraid to realizing that if you want to never feel afraid in your whole life, develop a superpower. That superpower is not being Mr. Courageous Superman, bulletproof. It's called being a man of faith. You'll learn something about the universe. And I'm learning this now. I'm new to the game, man. I promise you, I'm new to the game. That if somebody said I can have any superpower, it would be faith. There is nothing more powerful. Faith that I just need one rock and that forehead. And then do you ever think about it? Like when people are really, really in touch, there's a disproportionate confidence that comes with it. And fear, what is it? Just another poor little thing.
Yeah.
There's these stories, they reoccur, they speak to us, right? Like David and Goliath. It's like, it's an archetype at this point. And what is Goliath? Well, the thing that every person should fear. And well, what are you as David, the youngest of 10 brothers, not the biggest, the smartest, or the strongest. But he had courage, he had faith, he had belief. That's what we should be working towards, right? So I forget the 7-figure company. Try developing those things. And then the 7-figure company is just another game that you play.
Man, those are all interesting. One, I think I agree with you in the sense that the more we take action, the more we're going to realize what we're capable of and kind of get rid of some of those fears. You know, like you're saying, voluntary action towards the things that make us uncomfortable cause growth. I think that's for sure true. We got to have faith. But you mentioned being new to the game. What was the catalyst that kind of flung you into this like self-development, realization, betterment kind of lifestyle?
I'm new to the game because I'm always new to the game. When I started the game, I was new to the game. When I'm halfway through the game, I'm new to the game. The game keeps contributing. So I'm left forever a student, although my ego is the one thing that stops me from absorbing the knowledge, right? The student wants to be the teacher, right? But then you're just an open vessel though. So it's just pouring in and you're like, well, okay, this is great. Now I become the teacher today. And then you still find yourself still in studenthood and you're like, oh my God. And by the way, students have the ability to speak back to teachers and contribute and give to the science. In fact, sometimes they actually leave the universities to create a lot of the science, right? So it's like very interesting. And those aren't even the professors yet. And when I say I'm new to the game, is that I'm just constantly always learning from this, man. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. There's just one thing that's going to bring me down in my life. Just one thing. My ego. That's it. And when I say I'm new to the game, is I wish people understood this more about me. My God, I love my ego. And it's not because I like the me and the I and feeling good. It's because I like to find that nice chair and be a little diva for a little bit. And then the more I sit there, the more internally in pain I am. And the way that I cope with it is through being this decorative peacock so that I can let everybody else know to postpone the pain until, of course, all pain catches up to you. So you got to confront it. So when I say I'm new to the game, man, is that I'm constantly making sure I'm getting good at being able to put my ego where it's supposed to be and allow it to help me experience joy, because that's what your ego is there to do. I notice that when I go on these like, oh, bro, my ego died today, learned a new thing, and I worked with this client, we had this big breakthrough. I was experiencing less and less joy. So it actually had room in our life. It can't become the room. It has room.
Yeah.
And so learning to keep that balance within it. And one thing for me is like, the ego likes to have that disproportionate, not how about this, delusional, as in it's a lie of a belief. It's more of a coping mechanism for the doubt that you actually feel. I would be experiencing a lot of this ego, just being better than everybody, right? Because that feels great, but that makes you feel worse, because if you're better than everybody, there's another word for that. You're surviving. You're not seeing what you're capable of bringing to the world. And the one thing that really reinforces that feeling of ego in me is control, right? And so, well, how can I control things? I learned how to get the outcomes I wanted from the girls I would date. I learned how to get the outcomes I wanted from the business I'd date. And I was also disciplined enough to maintain serious weight on my shoulders to get the answers that I wanted. But I never did it from an actual place of elevation. I did it from a place of survival, which is being better than others, not being the best that I can. And then the ego doesn't like being the best that I can, because it means that you go back and you absorb and you take in more, which just means that you have more to give. And if I'm somebody that wants love, then you got to be in that state, and you can't let the other one control it. And you got to let these guys be friends so that you can grow and live life and experience life and enjoy yourself too. I've been really working on this, and I mean it. And I want to become a person that embodies more of the faith that he speaks about. I want to help other people let go of this control they seek and start feeling like they're worthy of the things that are on the other side of the control that they seek, and start that game. Because that game doesn't just have a finish line. It has free will and it has freedom. And I think that at the core of us, real love has freedom in it, and that's what we all desire. We all want freedom. So I realized that I was not free when my ego would just put me down in that chair going, oh, come on, more caviar. There's a certain point where you start feeling internally so unfulfilled that you know that you have to keep it in check. It's necessary. We all have to have those things. And so I mean it, man. I feel new to the game. And sometimes I'm coaching a client and I'm just finding, well, what do you do about this one thing? And I'm like, I feel you, man. Yeah. Like, I just figured this shit out last week. Yeah. Okay. I'm introducing it to you. Perhaps I could be the teacher. You could be the student. My ego's not here either, but we're both looking at what? The problem.
Yeah.
And how do we solve it together? And I think that that's what's been missing in a lot of coaching and a lot of friendships and a lot of relationships, is accepting the roles. It's okay. But we're all here to solve this problem together. And as the teacher, the formula keeps teaching the teacher. The teacher tries to teach the concepts better to the student, but the student is the relative creativity to the teacher to evolve the teacher, which means that they're working in harmony. And this equation or this mathematics or this God is constantly contributing to both of us. And so that's kind of what it is within myself.
I resonate with a lot of those thoughts. I think...
Thank you.
Yeah, the pursuit of being in line with what you say about faith and being the person that follows the faith, definitely resonate with that. That hits home. And then what I've also found with some of the identity portion of the things is like your identity fuels your beliefs, fuels your actions, and then your actions contribute to your identity, which fuels your beliefs, which fuels your actions. And if you're not ever analyzing some of those things, like taking apart the identity, like we mentioned, and saying, hey, something's missing here, that cycle is going to continue to spiral in a negative way or a positive way. There is a concept that I've heard you talk about, and it's about how society has pushed us to compartmentalize ourselves to a bunch of different versions, and that we end up disassociating for the majority of the day. Can you explain this concept more and how we can overcome it?
You know what's crazy, man?
Tell me.
Thank you so much. Forgive me for interrupting. That was a really old video of mine.
Oh, yeah. We go deep.
I just started doing this when I spoke about that, which is like, it feels to me like most people sign contracts with the devil. It cracks me up. That's so charming. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's really powerful. I think it's fear drives us to that position, and fear only comes from a lack of faith, because then there's no integrity outside of the circumstance that you're in, which is why the most powerful belief anybody can have is God. I still stand by it. You could redefine it. I'm also here to tell you, I die on this grave. I die on it, which is you need a belief system. You call it what you like. Call it Mickey Mouse. As long as it's bigger than your ass, because you can't do shit. Until you understand that, that's when you're powerful. I remember speaking at this live event when I did that video, and I was talking about how most people's whole lives are agreeing to things that they don't authentically agree to. Because society applauds it, they often go, well, okay, I'm going to do this because this is what everyone else wants me to do, and then I'm going to end up disassociating half of the day. And then you could go back to your life and you wonder why it's not fulfilled. And it's like, because you can't stand the life that you actually experience, that your subconscious, because that's what disassociation is, literally going, where's the fucking switch, dude? Just, oh my God, just turn it off. And actually, the full seminar that I had there, I actually spoke about the movies The Incredibles. I think that's the best way to do it. Sometimes these points just tell you a story. Go watch a movie, but watch it with intention. It'll save your life. I said, okay, well, what's The Incredible story? It's a story about super people. And I think we all have that in our youth. And that's the thing about Mr. Incredible and Mrs. Fantastic and Frozone. It's that they were painted that they were young and they were doing what they loved. And because there was a world that promoted art and creativity and divinity and goodness. And then what happens is when, like all goodness and all creativity, it comes with capacity. So people will get hurt. And that's something we aren't too willing to deal with. And so one day somebody gets hurt by a super, which is an individual or a person that has that genuine creativity and spirit of God within them. And then years go by, where do you find him? Well, he gets married, right? But the supers get shut down, right? There's going to come a point in life where your authenticity gets rejected. And then where do you find yourself? 250 pounds of pure strength in an insurance job going,
yeah.
They did a really good job of it. They didn't show you, look, this is haha funny, 9 to 5 suck. It was like, did you not see the story? Look where a superhuman, which we all are, has put himself. And it zooms out of the cubicle. Another head in the crowd. Individuality lost. Years go by where eventually, and this is the story of everybody's life, you're going to sit down. You're going to be enslaved. You are going to be heartbroken. And you are going to fall into fear. 100%. That's part of life. You grow up, you experience all the things that you experience, and then there's a tragedy, and then it throws you into this void, and then you're given a choice. With as much beauty as you experience, you'll experience as much of a void as you experience. And then you're there sitting in the middle, on the floor, looking at all that darkness and all that light. And you go, well, what is the reason I'm going to choose light? Maybe it's all bad. What is the faith behind this, right? I believe that God is good and that he's created this world good. Then you go, well, light. It's like your power starts to come back. And then it's like you start to choose that. And that's why we see this a lot, is that success breeds success and love breeds love, and more friends breed more real friends, and more authenticity breeds more authenticity. And it only happens once you've made his choice. So going back to the Incredibles thing is that you find that most people are disassociating because they've never even had an ability to process their pain. And then fear took over. But there's a certain point in everybody's life where I don't care how much of a desk jockey you are, something will hit you. It'll be a physical injury. It'll be a pinched nerve. It'll be a breakup. It'll be a financial loss. And we often go, oh no, that money was for my 401k at 60. That was the day that you were given life, right? And so going back to the incredible stories, that when did he break free? And it's like, well, he lost it.
Yeah.
He nearly killed somebody. That's when he realized, I can't integrate this anymore. I'm going to go back to the job. I'm going to put on the old suit.
Yeah.
I'm going to own up. Why? Because if I continue doing this, I'll become the villain. And that's why a lot of people disassociate. They don't like that. You'll become the villain if you sit here longer. It's a miracle Bob Parr didn't kill that guy. Bob, are you listening?
Yeah.
It's a repression. And a form of that repression is through disassociation, so that you can lie to yourself about the absolute integration process that you have to do so that one day you don't hurt others. And that other person could always be you. And I think a lot of people forget that you could be that person. The suicide rates speak for themselves. The obesity rate speaks for themselves. The amount of SSRIs and antidepressant medication speak for themselves.
To our point earlier where we talked about action kind of negates a lot of these things, there has to be a sense of desire for these actions. And unfortunately, sometimes we let the pain of these things go far too long before we do. Like most people have a breaking point of, let's say it's unhealthy eating habits they won't feel like they need to make a change until it really hurts. And I think this is part of the process that you're mentioning is like, don't wait so long until you're in so much pain that your only choice is to take action. Like, it should come from a sense of desire to be better, to find a new way of doing things that's ultimately healthier.
You really pointed out something very insightful.
Hit me.
It was really powerful that you just mentioned that, and something clicked for me. If you are willing to feel, it's like this is, again, it just convinces more of the absolute love is an understatement, kindness of God, and you could say the universe, whatever it is, but that the goodness of this universe. And I think that that's a fundamental truth. Like a captain out at sea, he doesn't go, there's no land. He just goes, we're going to make the best decision because we're surrounded by land, which is a truthful statement, right? It's like the guy that's broke goes, there's no money around. And it's like, just move and you'll see, right?
Move.
You're letting this determine your reality right now. And then it will, because then you'll behave that way. So I think what you mentioned was an existential truth, which is if this universe is good, then it will do things to get you out of the positions that you put yourself in that are bad. What is that driving force? Pain. Mm-hmm. The only thing that could stop people is their ego from that point. Because remember, pain is pushing you. And then the ego is like a wall in front of that. So now you're getting crushed. And I mean this. And that's actually how I made this change in my life. And I mean it. I killed my ego. I'd get tapped out by white belts at a 200-pound 6'3" guy who's been working and doing martial arts his whole life. And then it was like the pain was a kindness from God to push me into it, because it hurt too much that I started moving, and I knew that there was a tiger behind me, and if I didn't make decisions now, the tiger would eat me, and I was done. You put it just so honestly, so simply, that it just really struck a chord with me. And I do believe that this life is good because there is pain. And the advice I'd give anybody who's disassociating in any manner or repressing in any manner, feel your pain and don't be like, what will people think about me after you do? Go, thank God I'm alive. I don't care what people think about me. You want to know my favorite word? Help. I know I might seem like a really intelligent guy. Put me on a computer. I can't deal with emails. I can't look at them. I'm like, yeah, bro, see you at 2. And I'm like looking for the answer. The whole point is I'm not afraid to ask for help, because I know that there are positions in power that I could put myself in. And then now your life becomes simpler. And I like that, because now I can experience more of that love I was talking about.
Lifestyle design, baby. I like it. Here's my segue here. You have to confront yourself when you're going through that pain so you can make a change. And a proponent of confrontation that you bring up is there's a healthy way to do it in relationships, and that it should happen. It should be a combination of having the confidence to confront your partner in a healthy way will obviously increase communication, but there's also, it can breed respect too, respect of boundaries and respect of one another. How have you seen confrontation play its part in a healthy relationship?
The ones that can confront other partners have exceptionally truthful relationships, which means that they can have long-lasting ones. The ones that can't bear resentment towards the people that they love and watch themselves in a court with the person that they committed their life to as they ruin each other's lives. I'm really big on this. The most dangerous people are non-confrontational people, because they can't even tell you what they're feeling when you ask them to do something. And they're not even strong enough to say no. Because no involves confrontation. That involves me going, why not? And then that involves you expressing yourself, which then involves me going, well, maybe you're not expressing yourself well enough. Again, another product of fear. If I can die with any message that I can give to the world, and I know that sounds really dramatic. If you don't become a confrontational person and begin to love it, you will never have love. You'll have a version of it and it will feel good, and you will always be at the mercy of your own emotions, and even worse, at the mercy of that other person's emotions and moods too, which means that you can't ask for anything in your life, that you can't communicate anything about yourself, that you'll look in the mirror and all you'll see is a weak person. And then you'll look at the people that you love, and then eventually every step that they do something in order to protect themselves, you'll paint them out as a villain. And every day that you go out in that car and you go away from that partner of yours, you're not coming back to your partner. You're painting a distorted picture in your head, which is only spiraling more lies because of your weakness. And then you come back there and then you're like, well, now I'm going to confront that person. And you still have no courage to confront them. So that picture in your head of who they are turns them into a demon. Who's the knight in shining armor? You. Which is the most entitled, conceited, arrogant, naive, destructive thing that anybody can do. I try to teach people how to integrate a lot of who they are so that they can become them. Not villains, not heroes, real people that have genuine wants and needs. They just want to be close with you. And that's going to take two people. Confrontation scares so many people because of the upbringings they've had. They've been shut down. They've been rejected. And why would you do that now if I could just live a little bit longer? Believe me, It's a constant process that involves presence. I know that everybody goes, presence, presence, presence. And this is something, I mean this, like I said, I'm going to die on this message. So real love only can be happen when there's respect. And you have to be able to respect the person in front of you by making sure that they have clearly set those boundaries. Respect is also saying no to the person that you love. Respect is also being able to communicate those feelings when it's important to communicate those feelings. So I kind of like a little framework, which is you want to have long-lasting romance with a partner, spouse, or friend. When they do something that irritates you in the slightest way, confront them. And when there is the joy of life, act on it.
Celebrate it even.
And you need to be present enough to recognize it. Remember a bad day at work, and then you come home and then your wife's, babe, this thing happened and I don't know what to do and I misplaced the car and it's this. And it's like, what do we often do? It's like, well, bad day at work. I don't want to deal with this because I'm entitled that I don't have to deal with this too, right? And it's like, well, why is work something I have to deal with? Why isn't that something I can't just see as like it's taught me today?
Yeah.
Then you come home to your wife and maybe she's having an awful day and then you're like, no, I don't want to do this, and you avoid it. And that's like, that's the day that you burnt that bridge for that love making that you would have till your hundreds. You burnt it right there. And it's like, well, then what happens the next day? She really wanted to be heard. You said, I want to go to bed and turn on the TV. And then she didn't have the courage to go, sit down right here before I rip your off your body, which most women don't, which I don't blame you for not. And a lot of men are avoidant. They'll walk away. They'll go upstairs and be like, babe, please, right now. I had a long day at work. And they turn on the remote. That's where your relationship died. Not 20 years later.
Yeah.
You just embodied that behavior day after day after day after day. And what happened to your presence? And then with that presence, you lost your romance. And with that romance, you lost your love. And then it's like you're unrecognizable. You have all of these things, resentful things to write to somebody. At the end of 5 months even. And it was all because you didn't have the courage to speak up to yourself, because you actually never really cared. You taught yourself that caring was being apathetic towards these emotions. A lot of men have taught themselves that being strong is repressing your emotions and calling it stoicism. And in fact, those are people that do not care about their relationships. This will save you in business, will save you in dating. You see your business partner and you go, you like these deals? I remember somebody you want to do business with, make millions with, and you go, you like these deals? And then he goes, yeah, I'll do it, man. You know, you've been a really good friend to me. Grab the piece of paper, look him in the eye and go, for the sake of our business and for the sake of our friendship, respect me here. I'm going to ask you again. I felt something. You were hesitant. You were afraid. And you wanted to help me out. I'm not asking for a favor. Do those numbers suit you? And then he goes, yes. Then I go, great. Sign the contract. Well, let's never open up this envelope ever again. Let's make some money.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid of doing that. Why? I'll be perceived as some sort of monster. I'm a monster, actually. You are too. And I speak this to a lot of people. Understand that your monster allows you to have love. The man allows the child to play in the field, doesn't he? The child really gets to play when there's a father with a shotgun. Yeah, man, just hang out where I can see you. And it's like we don't show other people that. And the same thing in a relationship. Honey, I'm not in the mood. You were and you wanted to. This is very common, and I speak openly here because most people are like, oh, but I'm an alpha male. I get the fuck whenever I like. No, you're not. Who cares? You're not getting laid. That's the problem. Let's solve that problem. And then she goes, oh, I'm not in the mood. And then you go, well, you know what? I had sex every day of the week. It would be so selfish of me to not let her be in her mood. What's that called? Rationalizing. It's called rationalizing. So you repressed an emotion and rationalize that emotion because of the fear of confrontation of there might be a fight. Do you know why I want there to be a fight, honey? Because I love you. And you know why I want there to be a fight, honey? Because I want you to hear what I'm actually experiencing right now. And you know that I want to communicate this to you? Because I only want there to be truth between us. And it's because I want our date in the morning to be even better than ever. And it's because I want our sex after this to be something that's actually real. And I just want to understand more about this situation. And I actually want to communicate the truth. I don't care how you see me. I care about us. That is a message that I will absolutely dedicate my life to. Because it's not something that you can ever say too much. It has strength, it has courage, and it has truth. That right there, man, that's the godliness that I stand for.
Yeah. And you need all three. You
have to meet all three for love's sake, for God's sake. I know a lot of people say God's sake, but it's really interesting. The whole God thing lately, I've been throwing it out a lot because it triggers a lot of people too, but it also brings people really close. That's what I find interesting. It brings people really, really close. It also separates people. So that means that there's truth here. It's polarizing. Yeah. Anything that's authentic is polarizing. Anything that's truthful is polarizing. You see groups migrate like that, big divides. You're like, wait, hold a second. If we can communicate something here to make this, bring it together, well, then that's great. Because right now we're seeing two magnet pieces with whenever that word gets thrown out. So I just really wish that people understand it as something that's universal, something that's just existentially true. It's not like don't think of church when you were 5 years old, or for me when I was in temple and everybody was going, shh, you're speaking at shul. And I'm like, wow, great. This is so much fun. Yeah. Or when you had to hear a guy have a whole lecture in Hebrew and you didn't understand a word.
Yeah.
And when they pick out the Torah and you don't understand shit. And all you have to do is sit down for 3 hours. And then your association to God becomes boring. Mm. I get it. Anybody that has a negative association to it, I get it. Rabbis, priests, and ministers, they run the rape culture, man. They're the forerunners. So I could see how they also run with the name of God too, and it's really destructive.
Hot takes. These are hot takes, Natali. Hot takes. Earlier, you brought up friends too in the course of the relationship aspect and of confronting when it's timely to, and ensuring that there is honesty between one another. And I know you also want in your friend group to have radical honesty. So tell me, what's the best advice Ben Hamer has ever given you?
How do you know Ben Hamer?
We have to know Ben Hamer.
Well, you have to know Ben Hamer. Well, wonderful. Really great research. So Ben Hamer is a really good friend of mine. He lives in New York now. And if you know something about me, it's that if you're not in the same state as me, I love you. And that love never disappears. I just focus on the things that are in front of me. Ben Hamer really gave me perspective. And that's what he gave me. He gave me a really good perspective. I was 19 years old and an overachiever. And like all overachievers, you're never good enough because you're insecure. That's at the time where you have to integrate that insecurity by keeping it he doesn't get a throne. He gets a seat in the office. Then it starts to tell you what you could do to improve the business, so to speak. So Ben Hamer, I remember and he was somebody that's the thing about friends is that you really want to feel free with your friends. Know that you can tell them anything. Like you're being a bitch right now. Or what is this behavior? It's like some egomaniacal narcissism. Right? Or what the man? You said you'd show up at this time and you didn't. Like that's how family talks to each other, right? They're not like walking on eggshells like, Mom, you're correct. I shouldn't have spoken that way. It's like, Mom, what the where's the car? I said I needed it this week, right? Because that's actually kind of what love looks like. And you don't want to walk around eggshells with people that you love, but you also want to speak to them kindly and how they like to be spoken to. I was driving in the car with him. I was 19. At the time, I was training people. I had plenty of exposure to people, and I always learned psychology. So I just practiced it even when I was younger. I came back from Israel. I had 30 clients that I was training. I was making a really good living. And remember, when you're running around with your ego, it's about being better than everybody else. And then once that gets taken away from you, you're no one. I said, bro, I need a friend. I need help. I'm going to open up a gym. I'm going to go full business entrepreneur. Here it is. I got money. I'm going to throw it at it. And he's like looking at me, like freak out in the car as he picked me up. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to get these clients. And he's like, Naftali, are you 20K in debt? And I'm like, no. He's like, okay. Are you suffering from alcoholism? And I was like, no. He's like, shut the up. And I was like, whoa. If I ever felt love, that's what love felt like. He grabbed my hand and he said it again. So shut the fuck up. And I was like, my God, it's the first step of humility there. My life got a lot better after that because I let go of that. I would have been Naftali Moses, the gym owner. And I noticed, you know what a lot of friends do? They go, I'm going to be a good friend and listen right now. No, it was pissing him off. He grew up in his father abandoned him at a young age. And we were always very close friends because we could always speak openly with each other, even when we disagreed. He was always hardworking and he knew that he trusted himself because he knew he was hardworking. And his mother was a single mom who barely could afford paying the rent for a long time. And he was somebody that had to look to alternatives that he never thought he would have had to look for. And I'm out here, tall, dark, and handsome, 100K in the account, complaining about how I want to be an entrepreneur and that it's difficult. Shut the fuck up. And it was like, you're right. If I really want the answers, I need to speak to myself lovingly and I need to speak to myself fully realized. Because then I'm actually speaking to myself. I wasn't speaking to myself in the car to him. I was speaking to an insecurity. And I also wasn't speaking to my friend. And you don't think that friends can just God damn it, look at you. And then you're not oh, no, what do you mean look at me? I'm still even after you slap me. It's like, I'm not going to let you embarrass yourself here. I'm going to help you. I think that the most valuable thing anybody can have in their life is good friends. Okay, I still stand by that. You could be in a trench in World War II. You could pull out a cigarette and you guys haven't eaten in 2 days and you've been shot at and one of you's bleeding out, dying of gangrene. And you could smile. There's joy there. And what the hell? And now we exist in a world where most people don't even have friends. And I know so many people that I work with that are surrounded by people but have no friends. And it's because none of them actually see them. None of them invite them to f them up. None of them invite them into those close spaces because they're too afraid. Maybe they'll say something. And it's like, where's your value system? Where's your own structure? And every day, I mean this, I was telling this to my friend last night. I'm caught by these 6 friends when I fall. And I melt completely. I'll hit the ground.
Yeah.
And they're there. All with that net, and they catch me. And they don't just catch me and go get back up. They go, are you all right? Is everything okay? What do you need? Let's get you back up. Are you all right? Go ahead. You take care of this. You take care of this. Don't worry, I got you. Of course I'm crying all the time. Of course I'm new to the game because I'm powerless, but I'm powerful when I know that I'm in control of the way that I feel in these in remarks, and that I can actually develop these relationships. Like, you're in control of that just by being what? Completely open. No fear of the rejection, just completely vulnerable with belief that what you're presenting is beautiful. Yeah, Ben Hamer, man. I grew up with the guy. Profound things have only come out of his mouth, and he's only going to continue saying profound things.
It's amazing. I'm glad he was able to give you that perspective shift in a timely moment.
Oh man, it was a timely moment where I realized I talked too much.
He gave you the humility. It was a metaphorical slap right when you needed it. Yeah, and I think it's good to have friends that are going to be there for you. And they also say that vulnerability is, it's powerful. I think that's a reason many people are afraid of vulnerability, but it's often perceived as powerful because they're willing to expose what others are not willing to expose. Naftali, we are moving to the final question of the podcast. You've made it. We've powered through. We've got it. You've brought a lot of insight. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your philosophy and takes on things, and your desire to better other people through these ideas and concepts where they can tap into more confidence, more faith, and pursue the things that they want to pursue. So I'll start with that. Thank you for coming on and sharing those things. The final question of the podcast is, what does it mean to live a fulfilling life?
There's two things that people need to live a fulfilling life. There's no question about it. You're going to have a system of values that you're going to have to anchor yourself to get some form of identity, because we're like limited beings with unlimited potential. We are 12 keys on the piano with an infinite amount of songs that you could play. That's a pretty big responsibility. Just remember that you're always 12 keys. So the reason why values are so important is because it could give you a reminder that you're always just these 12 keys. It'll ground you. And then you can start playing music. Every man is composed of their foundations and their beliefs, and those 10 beliefs, whatever they are, the 10 commandments, that's for me. And we have these belief systems and philosophies. That's the beautiful part about it. You got a gun, right? You got things that you can protect yourself with. You got feet on the ground. And then there's your emotions. And those things could be wild because they don't fit molds. You don't fit molds. You go into every room and you're like, I love this whole God thing. And they're like, yes, but I forgot to say that whole of yours, it's kind of makes this whole God thing confusing. So we're going to get rid of that. And we'll set you up with a chick and it'll be okay, I promise. And then you're like, oh, okay, what do I do? Right. And it's like, well, then you have your value system, which is inherently authenticity, vulnerability, honesty, family, community, God, bigger things. A lot of people make this really big mistake, which creates a very unfulfilling life, which is they go, oh, the ideal. And then they bow to it. And every time they feel every emotion, they go, get out of here. They repress them, until one day, by the way, they become immoral. And then, by their own admission, become unforgivable. Because they know they went against their code. They tried beating the game by inviting death. That's most people's lives. They're like, well, if I can not sin, metaphorically speaking, if I can not up, and then I can stay clean, right? Then I'll leave to something better. What's another word for that? I'm praying that I die really quick, because the time by which it's going to take me to integrate this sexuality, to integrate my spirituality, to integrate my physicality and the desires that I have for life is going to be longer than my ability to persist and hold them back. So somebody kill me quickly. By the way, guess what? They're praying to die. And it's like, well, okay, now how do you create a fulfilling life? Well, the alternative of that, which is look at the ideal, look at the spirit, look at the North Star, and then look at the animal and the ground that you stand. And every time it's like, and I'll just use it the best that I can describe it. It's like you want a wife and kids, right? Fulfillment in that, right? And we often go, well, where am I now? We know most people don't ask that equation. They don't go, where am I now? They just go, well, wife and kids. And if I keep showing up and if I keep waiting, then it'll be there. And it's like, no, it won't. It really won't. Right? And it's like somebody needs to tell you that. I hope you have some friends, right? Yeah. And then you're like, well, I'm going to go ahead and repress this. And then eventually when you repress it a little bit, you're going to find yourself going against the ideal. And then you're like, okay, actually, I'm the dude in between these. The ideal, wife and kids. And then what does the gorilla do? Horny. I want. And you're like, whoa. Okay. He wants, but we want wife and kids. I think I got an idea here. And then there's you. Now you're engaged, right? You got these forces and you're no longer worshiping the ideal and you're no longer repressing the animal. You're integrating them. And then that creates harmony. And then guess what? What happens when the animal is speaking to the spirit with love and the spirit speaking to the animal? They're like friends. And have you seen good relationships? It's like they keep contributing. And that's a fulfilling life. By the way, it's hard at first. Like all things are hard at first. You go to the gym and you're like, I'm not putting on muscle. And it's like, well, you show up, you eat your calories and you get your protein in and you start packing on some muscle and you see the mirror and you're like, oh, that's a little nice horseshoe there. I see some pecs coming in. And then you go again, and it feels better. It gets easier. The weight that you came in there, the 65 pounds on the bench press, starts feeling like paper weight. And then now you're benching 145. And then you got 2 plates on it. And then now you're one of the gym bros. And it's like, well, what happens now when you got the community? You're never stopping. The key to a fulfilling life is to integrate all parts of you towards that ideal, and to let the ideal speak to you, not let it beat you up. And to let the darker emotions have space to express themselves, and not let those eat you up too. And that, if anybody can have any advice, establish your book, establish your system of values, so that you know how they can interact with each other. Because if you're worshiping the ideal and slitting your wrists, you're compromising your values here, right? And then if you're getting married and then cheating on your partner because you repress this, you're compromising your values here. And then you become the villain.
That's great. That's a great perspective. Naftali, where can people find you on the internet? Where can they get more of you? They want to hear more about your thoughts on these things. They want to say hi. Where do you want to send them?
The way most people work is, it's like, if you're older, go check out my website. It's naftalimoses.com or org. The domain switches occasionally based off of technician issues, but one or the other.
Got it.
I own them both.
Got it.
And I think where most people really find themselves, scrolling on TikTok or on Instagram, and maybe something changes the way that you think. Don't be afraid. Send a DM. We're all here to help in any way that we can, even if we can. And then I'm building up the YouTube and more of the, I guess you could say I want to get more of this out there. So it's all a journey, and I can't do it without any of you guys. And I can't even do it without your willingness to have me here. I'm so grateful for that, man. It's like I'm supported.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love having you here. Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. All those links are going to be in the show notes. So if you want to go say hi, that's where they're at. Go click those links, say what's up, scroll through the TikTok, the Instagram, learn a thing or two, and we'll catch you next time. Naftali, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. The real reason you're still here is you want to know the answer to the riddle of the week. But before I give you that, I want to remind you to leave a 5-star review. All right, riddle of the week. Which state has the most streets? Rhode Island. Obviously, the longest island with the longest roads. Rhode Island. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next week, Friday at 6 a.m. Bye.